Today's topic is we are going to digitize true type fonts that you might have on your computer that you've downloaded from websites. You can take a true type font, have the software convert it for you automatically, but sometimes it doesn't really digitize it the way it would work as if you created it yourself. So we're going to go through and digitize a true type font for something that you might be doing in a job, for a school that they need specific font that you only have in a true type font. So what we're going to go do here is, normally you would go to the embroidery tab and choose lettering, and then here you've got your digitized fonts, which is basically your keyboard lettering font, and then below it is your true type fonts. In here is a list of fonts that are on, obviously these are on my computer. There could also be some here that we've downloaded from websites. A good website to go to would be dafont.com, dafont.com, or another one to go to is 1001fonts.com. Those are a couple that I use when downloading specific fonts that I want to use. So we're not going to do this way because this way is a keyboard font. You select the true type, you type in what you want to say, it brings it on screen and creates the stitches for you automatically. But instead, we're going to go to the Artwork tab, and we're going to choose the text. In here is your vector text or your true type fonts. You've got the same fonts here as you do in the other list in embroidery. As you can see right now, it just shows the word sample. So what I will go ahead and do is I will go ahead and type in what I want to say first, and that will just be Coldesi. And spell it right. So now when I go into look at my true type fonts, I'm asking to see the word Coldesi in those specific fonts so that I can choose the one that I want to choose. So for example, you choose A.R. Berkeley, which kind of looks like a calligraphy font, or you've got Blanca, which is a script font, and you just scroll through your list until you find there's Destin, which is very similar to the ESPN font, where it has the line that cuts through the top of the text. We'll just scroll through. Let's say we'll choose this one. This is a cool one. This is A.R. Herman. So we choose A.R. Herman. We'll then choose a size. We'll leave it, say, at 1.5 inches. You can have it bold. You can have it italicized. We'll go ahead and click OK. Now we've got our text on screen. And just because we brought it in as 1.5 inches, we can still take the box that's highlighting the text and increase it to the size we're actually going to be digitizing it at. So when doing that, we'll go ahead and I like changing the color because it's always going to come up as the first color of your color palette here on the left-hand side. I want to change it to a blue color just because when I go to my embroidery tab, first color of my embroidery is red. So digitizing red on top of red gets kind of difficult to see. We can always double click on needle number 1 here. It'll take us to our color palette, and we can always change the color to a specific color that we want to create our text at. So rather than red, I now have an orange color. You can do the same effect by clicking on the color palette up top and coming in here and changing the color as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to zoom into the letter C. And there's two ways that we can do this. Depending on the size of the lettering, if you're doing a large jacket back or if you're doing, say, Greek letters, where it's just roughly maybe 2 or 3 letters on the left chest, those are large enough that you're going to do a fill stitch. So what you would do is you would choose the uniform area, you would choose area with pattern, and then on the left-hand side, rather than doing it as a manual, you're going to choose auto and change it to autocomplete. By doing this, you now have a magic wand instead of a cursor. You would then left-click on the area you want to fill. It's going to put running ants around that object. Once you have that, simply hit enter. It'll then fill your object in that particular font or in that particular fill pattern that you chose. So if I turn on my real view, that C is then digitized. That's an easy way of doing it. But since we're going to do it as a satin stitch, we're going to come up here and choose embroidery, choose column, and do column with a zigzag. Now before I start digitizing, I like going through and setting all my settings so that they stay for the duration of my digitizing this keyboard font. So what I want to do is I want to change my underlay, and I usually start with, say, a 5.25 as a default, the density. My underlay, I usually stick with a medium. That's a nice size. I don't add pull compensation or short stitches to start off. I will do that afterwards if I feel it needs it. And the only way I'd feel it need it for the pull compensation is for the thin areas in this particular font right here. Next thing I want to do is over here is I want to choose my beginning stitch, and what this is the stitch that connects with the bobbin before it takes off and starts sewing your design. So what I usually like doing is I'll put a classic stitch in the front, and then I'll go to the end and add a classic stitch to the end. Basically what that is going to do is when your design first starts stitching, it's going to put like a bunny hop in the front with 2 or 3 stitches, and that'll give the machine time enough to pick up the bobbin before it takes off at the high speed to start creating your letter. That gives it time to lock the top stitch with the bobbin stitch before it starts running off. So what I usually do is you do the beginning and do the end, and then if you want to add a trim, since each letter is individual, I will come up to my trims and say yes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and zoom in to the particular part of where I want to start. And I usually try ending my letters at the closest point connection, which of course on this letter is going to be the end of the letter C, which would be right here. So what I want to do is come up here, since this is a curved letter, I'm going to change my stitch type to curves. With my left mouse, or with my left mouse button, I'm going to start digitizing, placing points as I go around my letters. Now, the key to this, so that your stitches are nice and uniform, is when doing a satin stitch, it has to be a pair of points. One on the inside, one on the outside. That pair of points is connected by an imaginary dotted line. You want that dotted line to be the shortest distance across between those 2 points. If I place it up here, that's not really a shortest distance, and now my stitches are going to twist. You want your stitches to flow smoothly around your object. As a good example is think of spokes on a bicycle tire. You've got the center point and you've got the outer point of the rim. The outer point, the stitches or the spokes are placed farther apart compared to the inside of the rim of the bicycle tire. Think of it the same way that you're doing here, because you want these stitches to flow nice and smooth, and you want to be able to not have them twist, bunch up, cause issues while sewing. Because majority of the time, in a lot of calls that we do get, first question we always ask is, can we see the design? If you're having a lot of thread breaks, stuff like that, is we like to see the design. The machine's only going to do what the design tells it to do. So if your stitches are twisted, bunched up, density's too thick, underlay sticking out, that's going to cause issues when the machine sews. So what we like to do is look at the design first and rule that out. It's very easy to look at. Bring it up on screen as a DST or as a DSG design if you've created it, and it's the first thing we can try to rule out and then work on the machine. All right, we'll come up close here, and then when I'm done, I'll press enter. And as you can see, those stitches flow smoothly around that design, that letter C. So if I were to place a point here on the inside, and then if I were to place that one up here, it would really be spaced out on the outside, but you want to try to have this nice and flowing stitches. All right. Let's see, we have a question. It says, what happens if you do not crisscross your points? That is a good question, Phil. And basically what it will, whoops, I zoomed it up here. What's going to happen if you do not, if you crisscross your points? I will show you right here on this letter. So instead of going left, right, left, right, left, right, or right, left, I'm coming here and I just start going across. Remember, since we're in a satin stitch, it has to have a pair of points. So now what it is these 2 points are a pair, but then you see the dotted line connecting these 2 points, then the dotted line connecting these 2 points, and dotted line connecting these 2 points. So if I hit enter, it tries connecting that satin stitch following your pair of points, and you just get a big mess, kind of like an erector set, going up just one side of the letter. So you always have to go back and forth, back and forth. You can go left and right, right then left, left then right, right then left, right then left. You can keep going around the same way, or just go ahead and, do it to the side, one side to the other side. But it has to have a pair of points. And it has to have one on the left side, one on the right side. Always connected by that dotted line. If it's not, then what happens is you get that twisting effect that we just saw right here. Not a problem, Phil. Any questions so far of what we've gone over for that letter C of the Coldesi, digitizing a true type font? Excuse me. All right. Now, when looking at this letter O, because it is a custom true type font, we now have it where it's a swirl, but the swirl opens up into a larger area, but we have this gap right here where we need to combine both the inside and the outside so that it looks free-flowing and blends in together. So we'll come in here and we'll choose curve. I'll go ahead and zoom into the area. And I always try zooming into the area of what I'm digitizing. It just helps me out trying to line the lines up and create the actual shape of the image as I go around. The only thing you do have to remember is when you are digitizing and you do zoom in really close because of certain areas or detail, just keep in mind how close you are zoomed in, because you might want to do a running stitch rather than a satin stitch, or a satin stitch rather than a fill stitch in the area that's zoomed in, because you are so close. So if you do it as a satin stitch, should have been as a running stitch. When you zoom out and look at it as 100%, you realize I should have done it as a running stitch because you were zoomed in so close. So just keep that in mind. And these points here, you could spread out as you go around, because that line will take the shape of the object. And if you see it's not taking the shape, go ahead and back those points up and put your points a little bit closer together. Now what I'm going to do is right here is where it starts to blend. So I'm going to place a point here and one right here and hit enter. And I will fill just that particular section. You zoom up to the top part. So now we want this to be like it's a bicycle tile. It's complete. It's a complete circle. So I've ended it here. I'm now going to place a point on the far side and take that dotted line. And you can see where we can match it up. And now I'm going to start going around the outside of this letter O. And when we come back around to the opposite side, we're going to match those points up so that it blends in, it merges with it, and when it sews, it's going to look like one complete letter O. Whoops. A little too fast there. And if you ever make a mistake or place a point that you don't want placed, just hit your backspace key, and that will back out your last points placed. If you hit Control Z, that will undo your last object that you did. So if I were to stop here, hit Control Z, it would take out the complete letter O. So you just want to hit the backspace key, and that will backspace out one point at a time. All right, now that we're coming back to the front, I'll place 2 more points here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a point right here on this line. place a point on that line, press my enter key, zoom out, turn on my real view, and there I've got my letter O. So as you can see, it's all merged together. When it sews, it'll look like one complete letter O. Now what we'll do here is we would go through and continue on with the L, the D, the E, the S, and the I. Let me zoom over so we can see the whole word. Then I would then come back and place these dots around the letter E here, and then put the dot up on the I. Now the good thing here is if these dots are exactly the same all the way around, you can digitize just one letter. Right here, I'll give you an example, is we'll go ahead and just digitize this little dot. Now what I'm going to do here, because I want this to be a circle, is I'm going to place my side points at the largest area just a little bit outside my image. And what that's going to do is when that sews, that's going to pull in, hopefully giving me my circle. If you do it directly to the shape when it sews, it's going to sew, it's going to tighten its stitches, it's going to pull in, you're going to lose that the roundness of it. I'll grab my arrow, it's already highlighted, I'll hit Control C, Control V to paste. I'll then take it, place it on my other circle, Control V, and just keep going through. And if it's all the same shape, might as well just digitize it one time and just do a copy and paste until you work your way all the way through and create your lettering. Any questions so far on digitizing a TrueType font using a satin stitch? That is a good question. Once you create each letter, as of right now, you cannot digitize each letter and add it into the keyboard font list, which is up here in the lettering stage, underneath digitized fonts. That is something that we've stressed to the programmer. Not sure how difficult it is for them to do, but for something like that, what is nice, it allows you to, if it ever becomes available, it will allow you to digitize a letter at one particular size, for example, say 1.5 inches, and then save it so that you're creating your own digitized TrueType font. So when you come in here and choose from the list, you'll see your digitized font in front of you. So that can be something that can be worked out down the line, but as of right now, there is no way to actually create your own keyboard lettering font. What I would suggest, though, is if you did find it, that you're going to use this font a lot, when you're in the artwork tab and you're in the text here, for this one, type in the whole alphabet. Type in A through Z, type in the lowercase, and then type in the special characters and then the numbers. Save that complete font on your screen as, say, A.R. Herman in a folder on your desktop somewhere. So whenever you want to do designs using this TrueType font, basically you open that up, grab the letters you want to use, and paste them into your design, and then place them where they need to go. And once again, since you digitize it, you can size it up or down, and it will change the stitch count for you automatically. So there's no need to worry about that. Is you just digitize it one time, save this file, and then when you open it up, grab the letters you want to use, place them where they're needed, size it down, size it up, and then you're good to go. All right, we got another question here. How wide can a satin stitch be? On the machine for Avances, once it gets to about 9.5 millimeters or a little bit larger, the machine starts to slow down tremendously. And even when it gets even a little bit larger than that, I think it's 12.5 millimeters, what happens is the machine places a stitch on one side of the satin, trims it, jumps over the other side, places one stitch, trims it, jumps over the other side, places a stitch, trims it. So when you're watching it sew, all you hear is ka-chunk, ching, ching, jump, ka-chunk, ching, 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 jump, and there's no stitches. So the largest satin stitch that I would do before start going into a fill would be probably to a 7.5 to an 8 millimeter width of a satin stitch. one of the main reasons is once you start getting into a wide satin stitch, say 8.5, 9 millimeters wide, is if somebody catches it on their ring or on a doorknob or a chair or, you know, on a zipper on a jacket and basically breaks one of those threads, sooner or later that might come unraveled because it is a very large satin stitch. Plus, another thing is you can take your fingernail and run it right through the middle of a large satin stitch and see the fabric in the background. You want your stitches to be nice and tight to where you're not going to be able to see your fabric, your garment show through your stitches. So I wouldn't go any more than 7.5 millimeters or 8 millimeters. Just to give you an example, 7.5 millimeters is 1/4 of an inch. So if you stay less than 1/4 of an inch for your satins, you'll definitely be good. The rest you can change to a fill pattern. For example, now if you're doing this, but you want the satin look of the way the stitches turn rather than a fill look, because a fill look is a flat one direction. The whole letter will be, you know, filled one direction like we did the letter C when we first started. In this one, we want to keep the satin look. We want the stitches to turn as it goes around the letter, but the satin stitches here are too wide. So we want to change it to a fill pattern. Simple way we can do that. After you've digitized it, you realize you want it to a fill, we will go ahead and select the letter C, come over to the far right, and open up our Object Manager. In here, once that letter C is highlighted, or whichever letter you do, which you can see is our column stitches, down below is your Object Inspector column. In here, the fill mode we chose was a zigzag. By choosing this, our drop-down menu, we then change it to a pattern. Now, as you can see, changing it to the pattern, you still keep the same free flow as a satin stitch turning as it goes around the letter, but in the thicker areas, it turns it to a fill stitch. Smaller areas stays a satin until it gets to a certain width, then it changes it to a fill pattern. So it still gives you that nice clean look of a rounded, smooth, curved letter, but in the larger areas, it then changes it to a fill pattern. Any questions on that part? Yes, if you knew you were doing it as a fill pattern first, what you want to do is when we choose column and chose column with a zigzag, we would have chose column with the pattern. Therefore, you're going to digitize the letter, and it's going to do it as a fill pattern rather than a satin stitch. You're digitizing it exactly the same way, just one's a fill, one's a satin. Now, let's say, like I was talking earlier, I'll go and open up a new window here, is if you're doing Greek letters, and Greek letters where you've got a fill, but then you want to put a satin border on the outside. I don't think I have any Greek letters here, so I'm just going to use an I and an O. That's kind of cool looking right there. And we'll just scroll down. Oh, look, that's Arial Greek. And let's just scroll down to a thick letter that you might find, say like an impact. Say these are Greek letters. We chose impact. We have it roughly, say 6.0 inches tall. We'll make it bold. And then we'll click OK. So there's your Greek letters. You've got an I and an O. You want to digitize them as a fill, then add a satin border to it. Simplest way to do it is you go to your embroidery tab, area uniform, area with pattern, choose autocomplete, left click on the I, press the enter key, left click on the O, press the enter key, and now you have those two letters filled with a fill letter, easily done. Now we want to add a satin border to it, so we choose the letter I. Obviously, we open up our Object Manager over here because down below, we want to choose borderline. In borderline, the fill mode right now is none. We're going to change that to a zigzag. There's that added satin border. We'll then go highlight the letter O, change that to a zigzag. And now we have our two letters, the I and the O, or the Greek letters, however you want to look at it. One with, you have a fill and you have a satin border on the outside to cover up the rough edges. So that would be the way you would digitize a true type font using a fill and then adding a border afterwards. Are there any questions on digitizing TrueType fonts? How small can you go when digitizing? I would probably say you could probably get 5 millimeters, possibly maybe even 4 millimeters in height. We do have, I did a sew out on our embroidery machine of a 3 millimeter and a 4 millimeter text. 3 millimeter didn't do too bad, but you start getting the letters like the E, the letter P, the R, those openings start closing up a little bit. So 4 millimeters seem to work really well. You know, Coleman & Company also sells a CD. They called it microfonts that I think Golden Stigma, I think, did, or it was Great Notions, Dakota Collectibles, one of those companies, did for us. And there's 10 fonts on the CD that are microfonts that are specifically digitized for 3, 4, 5 millimeter, you know, height in text. So you can purchase one of those CDs, or when digitizing, you just want to make sure that you reduce the density, add a little bit of pull compensation, and maybe use just a center walk for your underlay. Any questions on that so far? Hopefully everybody is learning a few things on when to digitize their TrueType fonts. All right. And like I said, you know, before, even with larger letters, open up and digitize every single letter and save it as an individual letter. You know, for example, if you wanted to save, you know, the letter I, I'll go ahead and cut this one out. We'll turn our vectors off. We'll go ahead and save the letter I. So this is what I would do. If you want to take a TrueType font and you want to digitize it so that you know you're going to use that style font for a long time, digitize it, save each letter in a folder, and then underneath a subfolder for that particular letter. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and choose Save. I'm going to save it a design document to make sure it stays as a DSG format, which is a condensed format that allows me to edit my design whenever I want. I'm going to save it to the desktop. I'm going to create a folder and call it Greek letters. Make that right, Greek letters. I'm going to open that folder up, and I'm going to create a subfolder and call it letter I. So in here, I've got my design. I'm going to call it I, and I'm going to save it. All right, I'm going to, you know, obviously now I've got my second letter I've created, which is my letter O. I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to go to File, Save Design Document As. I'm still in my categories of, on my desktop, Greek letters, the letter I. I'm going to go back to Greek letters folder, create another subfolder, create another subfolder, call this one letter O, open that folder up, and save my letter O in this folder. And you would keep doing that for every single letter. So you've got, you know, a subfolder called Greek letters, and then you've got the subfolders underneath it, which is your A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so forth down the line. So when you're ready to do your design work, you got your design up and you're doing Greek letters, we could simply come over to Designs, choose our desktop, choose our Greek letters. I'm going to open up my letter I, left click, drag that letter I into the window, click OK for the default colors. Now I'm using the letter O. I'll go highlight my letter O, grab that, drag that into the same window, say yes to keep the default colors. move it where I need to be, and now I've got my 2 Greek letters. So it's almost like keyboard lettering font, but gives you the ability to still do keyboard lettering font, but just in a different way. You're just clicking and dragging each letter individually rather than typing in what you want to say and having it pop up on screen. So it takes a little bit longer because you do have to digitize each individual letter one at a time, save each letter into its own folder for that particular letter, but then it's simply just coming to your designs, selecting that font, selecting the letter you want, left click and drag it to your desk or to your workable area, then you can actually create your word. Same thing with what we're doing here with the word coldesi, is I can digitize each letter in this font, save it in those folders, go to designs, left click and drag the word coldesi, create my word coldesi, and then I've got the font that way as well. So that is a kind of a little trick, is open up a font that you like for TrueType, digitize each letter, save it in each little folder, and now you've got your digitized TrueType font. Any questions on what we've gone over today? All right, I do thank everybody for joining me today, taking time out of their busy schedule to learn how to digitize TrueType fonts, save them as a design to be able to open them up into the software to create your own custom designs using a TrueType font. All right. The questions that we did not answer, we'll definitely get to them. I hope everybody learned something today, and I hope you have a great weekend and a good rest of your Friday. Oh, got a couple questions popping in here. Let me open them up. Let's see. I realize I actually need help with making good embroidery files from this ready list. Sorry, time we can go over this together. Yeah, just go ahead and put a call into the queue, and what we'll do is we can do a go to meeting with you and log into your computer and go over a few things so that you're actually seeing it, step by step on your computer. That is one thing that we do. We try to do as a go to meeting. So definitely put a call into the queue, and we'll definitely do a go to meeting and show you a few tricks and stuff about digitizing. As well as you can contact our lead trainer, John Dunbar, up in the New Jersey office. That's one way we can do that as well. Thank you, Phil. I'm glad it helped. Got another question here. When I trim between letters, it leaves the thread tail too long, which tends to knot up. All right. One way that you can do that is up here in the embroidery tab. Is when I was going over the classic end stitch, rather than use a star, a twist, a cross, or an arrow, I usually go with the classic one because it's just a dashed line. And, if you don't leave a lock stitch at the end, just click none. Still do a trim. Your thread still will be locked in. But I always better be safe than sorry, and I always add a lock stitch. But I always do a classic rather than a star or a twist because then it leaves just a single line rather than the knot. All right. Okay, great. Give me the link to that. I will definitely do it. And thank you, everybody, for joining me today. I hope you have a good Friday. Hope you learned a little bit about digitizing TrueType fonts. And have a great weekend.